Welcome, everybody. This is yet another episode of Disruption Talks, and today we are going to be talking about the thing that makes the world go round: money. All of the companies that we are hosting, that we are working with as NetGuru, they need to have a source of capital. Sometimes it's revenue driven, a sort of eat what you kill kind of business. Sometimes it's public funding. You've seen many IPOs, Robinhood being one of the most touted ones over the past days. And then, of course, there's everything that precedes an IPO. So all of the series that you've come to know and hear from TechCrunch and LinkedIn. So ranging from pre-seed up high into the alphabet of series A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on and so forth. And you don't have to be a techie. You don't have to be an affiliate with the investment world to see the abundance of headlines concerning raises such as Trade Republic's 900 million, WeFox's raises. Just recently, Solaris Bank raised, I think, 180 million euros. Zilch, one of our past guests, also raised around 90 million for buy now, pay later from Goldman Sachs, none the other. So today we are going to talk with someone who actually has been spearheading that as the head of growth at Speedinvest. And joining us today is Jon Butterfield, the head of growth at Speedinvest. Hi, Jon.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure on our side, please. So yeah, the way that we usually speak with our guests is we first make sure that the audience gets to know you, then the company within which you're in right now, and then we speak a little bit about the industry given your expert position. So let's not make the audience wait any second longer, and tell us about yourself, Jon, please. What is the background, and how did you arrive from wherever were the first steps in terms of money tech, or perhaps something completely different, up until the 3rd of August today, where you are the head of growth at Speedinvest?
All right. Well, thank you. So I've been a serial founder and entrepreneur for most of my adult life. And I sold my first company back in 2002. And I sold my last company back in 2019. So within that period, there was lots of ups and downs, good and bad things. So I learned a lot from that side. But and with that, I started companies in the UK, in the US, in the Netherlands, and in Slovenia, where I actually live now with my family. And while being a founder, having a few different companies in different locations, I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with investors. It was always something that was tricky to work with. There's a whole way to learn how to work with an investor, especially for the first time. It's a very tricky situation to be in sometimes. Because you bring in other people to the table and they're pushing you and not always in ways you want to go. And with that, I had sometimes bad experiences with investors. So after my last exit, I started looking at ways of how to make this better for founders. And that's what led me to join Speedinvest. And for the last year now, we've been building this platform within Speedinvest to support our founders, to make it so the experience for them isn't as painful as the experience has been for me in the past. And that's one of the key drivers of what I'm doing at Speedinvest, and it's something that the team actually believes in a lot. So our managing director, Oliver, he's actually a founder before starting Speedinvest, and most of our investment managers are ex-founders. So we understand the pain and the stress and the trouble and everything that comes with being a founder. So that's one of the things that really sets us aside. And that's one of the things that now I'm focusing on within Speedinvest.
Okay, I mean, definitely I can share my story in terms of founding my first startup at 18 with co-founding it with Tom Young, who's gone on to done many other things. We got measly $80,000, but we felt like it was the time of our life at 18. And we also then ventured separately into many aspects of trying to raise money, even for non-tech projects. But my question to you is, you mentioned that at Speedinvest, investment managers equals ex-founders 99% of the time.
A lot of them, yeah.
And you also mentioned that the idea is to alleviate the community from the pains that you're
Mhm.
experiencing as a founder trying to raise money. So, would you say that that is the key differentiator? Someone who is in investing, VC, PE, whatever it is, angel investing, if they didn't have that founder experience, if like, can they be a CEO of the manufacturing plant if they never stood at the conveyor belt packing those things? If you're getting the metaphor.
It's you need a balance. So I think you do need for investment. In investment, you need people who are from a financial background as well, and you know went to school and studied this and have a good understanding from that side. But as a founder, there's a lot of things that go through your head. There's a lot of things that you can't just understand unless you've been a founder. It's like having a children. You don't really know what it's like to have a child until you have a child. There's lots of things you just don't expect. And with that comes a lot of understanding. And that's one of the things that really makes a difference. And that's one of the big things we've seen over the last few years. I mean, if you look at in venture capital and just investment in general for the last 20 years, you see a lot of these firms that are popping up these days are all started by ex-founders who have had an exit, and they're creating these micro funds of 10 to 50 million and supporting founders that way. And that's eating up a lot of the investment world now. So a lot of money is coming from these kind of people. So we're seeing a lot more activity in this new money from ex-founders as opposed to old family money, which is an interesting shift.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just something that naturally emerges, right? When you have founders who go through exits and then they have the money, they can further invest in their space, try to venture somewhere else, maybe fund their own venture. So, also relieving them from everything milestone, tranche, release, and all of those pesky items. So I want to ask, unless this is a personal question, UK, US, Netherlands, Slovenia?
My wife is Slovenian. It wouldn't be by choice, I don't think. Slovenia is not an easy place to start a company.
Definitely. I mean, when you look at the Central Eastern European region, companies like, I think, for example, WhatsApp or Brainly, so one of the ones that actually made it but are from this region, they had to cut it outside of here, essentially. They could have been born here, but there's no way that they could have blossomed in this place. So maybe we can talk about that later when we jump into how can we solve everything around us. So I'm curious, because you spoke briefly about your founder past, but is there any specific brainchild that you love the most out of, I don't know, all the Get Social or the Growth SDK mobile app that was used by Sega, Ubisoft, or Glue? Anything that was favorite, or building on the metaphor of a child, you love them all equally?
Yeah, I don't think there's one I love particularly the best. They've all had interesting backgrounds and interesting things. They've all been very different. So, for example, in America, it was a music streaming, live music show streaming service. And then in the UK, it was a property rental business, Airbnb-esque. And then in the Netherlands, it was Get Social, this SDK for mobile games. And then in Slovenia, it was building out accounting software. So very different things, very different. And in terms of the favorite, the most interesting one was probably Get Social. So that one, we grew that to quite a large team. We raised quite a lot of investment. We had offices in the Netherlands, in the Ukraine, and in America, and we was getting to power a lot of the growth tools for a lot of the major games and apps out there, a lot of the AAA titles. And it was really interesting getting to dig into all these different companies and see what makes them tick and what makes their users do certain things, and trying to focus on the acquisition side of that. And that was a really, really interesting time for me, just to learn so much from all these different companies.
Especially it was 7 years at Get Social. I'm stalking you on LinkedIn right now as we speak. 7 years must have been a ride. Out of curiosity, since you are at Speedinvest, is there anything prohibiting you from returning to being yet again a founder?
One day, I think it's in my blood. One day, I think I will. No, I will end up creating something again. Um, but for now, I'm in the perfect situation. So, like I said, with Get Social, one of the interesting things was seeing how all these different companies tick and supporting them all through their growth on mobile apps. With Speedinvest, it's imagining that, but amplified across lots of different industries. And that's one of the things that we're doing at Speedinvest, is essentially supporting our founders in that way. And at Speedinvest, we focus on a number of different verticals. So we have like deep tech, fintech, industry, marketplace, SaaS, and health, and working across all those different things. There's no one way to make it work, right? So we're learning a lot, and we're sharing our knowledge, and we're bringing in expert knowledge from other people that work in those industries. And there's certainly a lot of knowledge transfer going on, and the community that we've built within Speedinvest, because we've got a 200 plus strong portfolio, is just fantastic. So being a part of that, it's a lot like Get Social in that way, I guess.
So you just said knowledge transfer. It's time for your knowledge transfer to me and the audience. Your favorite or least favorite, most hated personal lessons learned over this serial foundership.
So the biggest mistake that I have made, and I see founders make, is that you get so wrapped up into building what you're building, is that you start to build it just for you, and you start letting your own emotions take control. And you've got to find that balance between coming up with your own ideas and building for you, and finding who your customer is and building for them. And that is the biggest problem, is finding that balance, because it can be hard. Like you said, it's like your own child. And when it's your own child, you don't really like to be told how to raise your own child, right? So it's that kind of situation. So one of the challenges, and this is something that we go through quite a lot with our founders, is there is this part of where you're innovating, and this innovation generally comes from not looking at the data and looking at the problem and just trying to build something for that. And that's where a lot of this innovation comes. But then once you start looking at how to grow that and how to make that product work for the customers, that's when you need to looking at the data and looking at the customers. So that's when you need to start talking to your customers more, understanding them, finding out where they live, where they work, what they do, what makes them tick. And this is something that, going to the other side, is what founders don't do enough. And one thing that I really like to push founders for is just talking to the customer. And one of the great frameworks that I use a lot, and actually when I asked a lot of our founders, if there was one thing you could go back and tell yourself at the start of your journey, what would it be? And it's surprising how many of them said, use the jobs to be done framework. And this jobs to be done framework is a way to understand what your customers are doing and why they're doing it, and how you can bring your products in and support them. So that's one of the things we use quite a lot. And that's one of the things that I swear by these days is the whole jobs to be done framework. And then moving on from there, the one of the biggest lessons I have learned myself is start with data. And by data, I mean, as you start planning and designing your product, say it's a digital product, and you start designing it and planning it and putting it all together before the development starts, start doing your analytics then. Start with your metrics then, seeing what all the event data is you want to track, and creating that user journey. It sounds strange to a lot of people, because they do that afterwards. They build the products and then they go in and add all the analytics and tracking and event data. But doing that straight away really starts to make you think about what is happening and what your user journey should be. And it also helps you then start tracking from day one and having all this data on hand. And having this data on hand has paid dividends to me so many times. As soon as I did it the first time, I was like, I am never not doing this again. And really understanding your data is one of the most important things. And the sooner you start tracking, the better, because you start learning more about your customers. So that's one of the big lessons that I took away from my own companies.
Also, what I'm hearing here is one thing that we always speak about when we have a disruption talk about data science or anything like that, that you can never start having data hygiene too early. If you make sure that all of that is ready for one day to be used, to the tune of the that you mentioned, you will be absolutely thankful to that founder yourself from 2 months, 2 years ago, when you decided to say, just in case I'm going to need this, let's just make sure that this is all clean. So yeah, I mean, what I want to ask right now, because let's dive into Speedinvest already, your investment thesis, your major values and beliefs as a VC company. What's if you can also mention this in the sense of what would be a no-go? Of course, if that's not too big of a constraint, but for example, where do you draw the line for Speedinvest in terms of what's an ideal company, but also on the other end of the spectrum, there are companies that, for example, you would see, a red flag. No name dropping, of course. We're not in the business of making anybody look bad, but founders got to know what they got to watch out for.
How can I do this without name dropping? No. So for us, I mean, we're an early stage investment company. So we invest before there is product market fit and before there is high growth. So we invest very early on. So what we're looking for at this stage, and also keep in mind, a lot of this early stage investment, a lot of it is down for first-time founders. So one of the things that we look for here is the team. How do they work together? How do they come together? How do they cooperate together? Do they tick together and so on? And that's a big part of this, because at the early stage, a lot can happen, and there's a lot of emotions going around because you're still discovering yourself, right? And then after that, the next thing is what is the opportunity of the product they're making? What is the size of the market? How big can this get? And do the founders understand that market more than anything? And I think those two things are the most critical part of what to look for. Because if you start focusing purely on the product at an early stage, that can change. And that pivots quite a lot. And like I said earlier, one of the problems that I've had with investors in the past is when you come in at an early stage, you're still finding your feet. You're still finding that market and that market fit. And you could make all these little tiny pivots with your product to make that work. So when you come in with a product and say, this is the solution, that's less important at an early stage than the team and the opportunity, I think.
Okay, that works. That works. I'm also keen to hear, in terms of Speedinvest, just briefly, Speedinvest Heroes. What's that about?
Okay, so we have, as I mentioned, we've built this platform to support our founders. And the platform is made up, there's about 7 or 8 of us internally, and we support our founders across growth, across people and HR, across business development and US entry, and also the community side of it. So because there's such a large group of us within the Speedinvest family, and then we have our partners and people that we work with, like yourself. And to support our team, we have 2 companies that support us on there. So we have the Speedinvest Heroes, which is focusing on the people and the HR. And that's an external team and company who support us primarily with hiring, and for example. Then we also have the Speedinvest Pirates, who help us with marketing and growth, and that's an external team as well, as in a similar fashion. So we have internally, there's a handful of us focused on there purely 100% of the time, And then there's about 35 to 40 people externally who work with us to support our founders.
Yeah, I just went on the Speedinvest-pirates.com website. I'm reading marketing expertise with roughly 1,352 dog years in digital marketing experience. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to jump into where you deploy your money, where that dry powder goes. So I'm reading in the news that Speedinvest closes a second marketplace and consumer fund at 60 million euros. That's from like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But that seems specific. So do you have several small funds, just like this one is on a B2B, B2C marketplace focus? Could you give a high-level overview of those? And if there is,
I mean,
just out of
we
my
have
curiosity, is there any area that, is there any space that, for example, seems a little bit frothy? I don't know, let's say VR or things like that.
I mean, well, I mentioned we have these kind of focus investment areas. So we have the deep tech, fintech, industrial, marketplace, and consumer, and SaaS and health. I think I got them all there. And so historically, what we've done is we've created small funds for each of these different areas. And a few that go across multiple as well. But this is mainly because a lot of the funds and the people who put into these funds are market specific experience and knowledge. So they want to focus on that specific area. And because Speedinvest we're a large team, we're a large company, larger than most firms. I think we're about 80 people strong now, which is quite a lot. So we need these dedicated teams, and we need these dedicated funds as well across there. So, but yeah, you're right. We just raised 70 million on the marketplace fund, and so the overall capital we now have is just over 500 million.
Yeah, I've seen that. I said 60 million because this was in euros. By the way, 10 million over the initial target. So congrats for doing it. So I know that we touched upon this, and I think touched upon this is an understatement, because we spoke about how Speedinvest is different in terms of the focus, the way it laser points that focus, in the way that you have the people who are not just theoreticians, but actual practitioners of the craft of being a founder. But is there like something unique? Because, of course, most funds could say something like that. It's not the fact that they will live what they will say, but is there like a secret ingredient, the secret sauce? I know Colonel Sanders, 11 Spices. Is there something like Speedinvest?
There is. And this is one of the things we're putting a lot of focus on over the last year and for the next and going forward. So the VC world is competitive, and you see about all these record raises over the last few years, and it's just getting more and more. And the amount that people are raising is just increasing. It's going crazy at the minute. And with this, obviously, you need to be able to stand out. You need to be able to support your founders more. And what there's differences between, getting dumb money, where you just get given money and you go away and play with it and that's it. Or you can get smart money, where you're actually getting access to expertise and knowledge and contacts. And we focus on that smart money side of it and taking it to that next level. And what we do there is that's where we bring in this platform team and we actually support our founders. And traditionally, this has been called operational support from VCs. But when we look into it, and a lot of the other investment firms that we talk to or work with, their approach with operational support is essentially having a Rolodex of contacts and saying, this person can help you here, this person can help you here. And at Speedinvest, we've taken that a step further, and we've created this platform program for our founders. So we actually support our founders from day one, and we actually actively support them. So we do things, for example, hosting events with industry experts, where we can get all different founders together and people together to discuss general topics and then dig into them individually. So creating that support network. Then we also run a lot of workshops through internally with our own founders and with us, our team, and with external companies as well. And then we also actually dedicate some of our resources to actually sitting down and getting our hands dirty with these companies. So like I said, a lot of them are very early stage. Many of them are first-time founders as well. And with that comes a lot of common mistakes that you can make. So we start looking at what these common issues could be. We assess the companies when they first join, and we say, okay, this is where we can support you. This is how it goes. And we do a very thorough onboarding with them, and then essentially support them and create a plan for them over the next 3, 6, 9 months to push them in the right direction and support them, and essentially let them know that we're also there we're on their side, and we're here to be an extension of their team, essentially. And that's one of the things that separates Speedinvest from many of the other investment firms out there.
So there's -1 dumb money, 0 smart money, and then there's Speedinvest, number 1 on the scale. Genius.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, I completely get what you say about like the operational support, which is like, yeah, here's our Rolodex, and it's not even that we're going to point our finger towards a specific person. Just help yourself. Yeah, just figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
We ourselves as NetGuru have. I started this with the partnerships team because they had connections just like yours, for example, and many other funds, smaller, bigger, more known, less known. But to simply be in that Rolodex, but proactively, in the sense of, we have a track record of working with, let's say, those 10 companies that over the time of working with us, they have successfully raised that money. If you would like to have us on speed dial for your portfolio companies, then that works. And we've seen those companies also partner with legal companies, with providing access to founders that have really made it in the exact same space, but for example, in a different geography to expand their perception. So 100% there with you that genius money is the way to go. Although I think sometimes we've seen situations where the best of intentions weren't really coming along with the actual smarts of the money. And sometimes it would be better when particular situations, the money would just be the money without the direction of the founder, or like helicopter parenting, if we're still playing around with that metaphor of a child.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's understanding where to draw that line, because being a founder is stressful enough. And the last thing you want to do is cause more stress. So it's understanding how founders operate, understanding where they come from, and how to support them. So we actually we do a lot of something called a founder check, where we actually do an analysis of the founder to understand them on a psychological level as well. So that way we can help them, the founders, connect with each other on a different level, and also how can we interact and support that founder and make it easier for them. Because we're also seeing now trends of people burning out a lot more, and also working from home causes its own stresses and changes to lifestyle, and things are going at such a quicker pace, and it's getting quicker and quicker. So we want to make sure that not only is the company healthy, but the founders are also healthy at the end of the day.
And I'm not sure how you missed that part when I ask you about the secret sauce, because that seems like going the extra mile or 10 mile for the founders. So that's something that I really like hearing. So right now, onto sort of the most generic questions that I could ask. So what's the latest with Speedinvest? How was the past year? How was this year? And what do you expect from the upcoming year or years? Any trends, any waves you're planning on riding on? Any storm up ahead that you're trying to avoid?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there. Okay, so
it's a what's up question, essentially. What's up?
Yeah.
Well, how's it going?
What's up? So the last few years has been growing incredibly. Not only for Speedinvest, but just the investment world in general. We're seeing almost, the second wave of the dot-com boom, right? Almost. And it's been a very strange world, because last year we had the start of lockdown with coronavirus. And while for a lot of us, that rings a lot of alarm bells, and we're thinking, oh crap, people are losing their jobs, people are losing their homes, people are dying. But in these times, there's also a lot of opportunity. And if you look back to 2008 with the financial crisis, a lot of big companies came out of that, and there was a lot of opportunity. And although it sucked at the time, a lot of good things happened from it. And we're seeing a similar thing now. So we've had some of the biggest raises in the last year alone. Some of the amazing companies have appeared and just grown crazy out of nowhere. I mean, Zoom took off. Then there was Hopin from the UK, just appeared and just skyrocketed. So there is that opportunity now, and it's about understanding that, and it's about understanding the market and what's happening. So from that side, there is a lot happening. There's a lot of money coming around. Like I said earlier, it's also competitive at the minute. But that also means, from a founder's perspective, there is no better time to create a company than now. If there's competition from investment sides, that means it's easier to get investment, and you can negotiate more, right? I don't know how much of that I should say, but yeah. And with there being such a change in markets, this shift in markets also gives you the opportunity to discover new markets and create new products, to solve new problems, because our lives are different to how they were 18 months ago. So we're keeping a close eye on not only the companies that are coming towards us and looking for investment, but we're also casting our eye onto the market and seeing what trends are happening and what problems are happening and where people need support the most. And that's helping us guide the future a lot more as well. And also from another area that we've seen is that because a lot of people are working from home these days, that means there is no reason why the next Amazon or Google or Facebook could not come out of somewhere like Slovenia. We've kind of removed the necessity to be in San Francisco so much. And this has created far more, again, opportunity for anybody to jump in and be a big player. So as part of Speedinvest, we've started looking less at the big cities like London or Berlin or Paris or Vienna. And we've started focusing more on underrepresented founders. So we've started looking to these smaller communities and minority communities and seeing what they're doing, and learning from them and actually supporting them a lot more. So we're actually actively focusing on that, and that's one of our plays moving forward. So we've actually recently just partnered with SoftBank, and we're doing an accelerator program called the Emerge Accelerator for underrepresented founders, which is kicking off in September. So we're actually actively trying to give back and support these smaller communities, because now we believe opportunity can come from anywhere. It's not the big cities anymore.
So I want to slip in a question contextually, because of course we could just hermetically keep the conversation, the Q&A session apart, but we have something quite relevant in those comments. It actually comes from our own Tomasz at NetGuru, an interesting story. In the year of Hopin's meteoric rise, Johnny himself, the founder, he was actually onboarding us. I think it was in March to the basic Hopin version, only, like later on in August or September to be touted all across TechCrunch as the unicorn. So yeah, definitely like a what moment. So the question is, and you just mentioned that it doesn't matter that the next Amazon could be started in Slovenia, but thesis here is, if Slovenia is not the easiest place to start a business, where in Europe do you see the best potential for startups today, and most importantly, why?
Yeah, so I mean, Slovenia is not easy to start a company here, mainly for the logistics of it all, and the support you get from the government. But there's a lot of countries out there where there is more support and making it a lot easier and a lot more founder friendly. So for example, in the Netherlands, incredibly founder friendly. And there was a lot of things to support growing a business out there. So these are things, I mean, it's not really important for from an investment perspective, but from starting a company perspective, it plays a big role. Because if you've got the whole, if the team behind you is not routing for your success, it makes life a lot easier, a lot harder, sorry. And so you're looking for that easy way and that support system you can get going, because it's hard enough to build a company and to build a successful company. So you need to make sure that the team behind you is routing for you. So the Netherlands has been very, very good for me in the past. But even then, it comes down to cities as well. So there's a lot of cities where you can get support as well. And that's why some of these larger cities do have the benefit. But if you find a good team and you work really well together and you find a good market, you can be anywhere. For example, a friend of mine in Slovenia, he had a $1 billion exit out of Slovenia, and they took zero investment. So it was a very good for them, and they did that all from here.
Can you share the name of the company?
They created Talking Tom video games, so Outfit 7.
Okay.
So they had an amazing story, and they've done crazy well, and they did that from Slovenia. So there's opportunity anywhere, but it's just getting the ball rolling. If you have the right support behind you, that can make a huge difference.
To continue with countless and tired metaphors, it's pretty much a garden situation. If it's well kept, the ground is very fertile, and the sun is shining, and irrigation is there when you need it, or natural rain. It's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. Like, how are you supposed to have the same ecosystem? For example, you go to London, you can go to Techstars, you can meet all the other founders. There's every other pub surrounding specific office buildings will have people just randomly being there. So how do you start that if there's no other founders, if there's no events, if it just has to be there to begin with, right? So
yeah, I mean, a lot of it is online now. Life is different. I mean, this would have been the thing 2 years ago. It would have been, okay, you want to start a company, go to London. It's not happening from small town Slovenia. But now everything's becoming online. I mean, look at us. We're talking from different countries to, I can see people from all over the world listening in. So there's nothing blocking us anymore other than excuses, right?
nice.
And for example, a friend of mine here I live in a small town, Slovenia, right in the bottom of the Alps, not even in the main cities. My neighbor here started a company and was in YC this year, all from here, right? So having a YC company that's based out of small town Slovenia, that's crazy. That would have even been thought of 2 or 3 years ago. So there is literally opportunity anywhere. You've just got to know where to look and how to look, and basically who to talk to. And everybody's available online these days, and everybody's open to having these Zoom calls and jumping on social media and things. So it's becoming the norm.
Right there with you. As much as I don't get tired of hearing, oh, you go too much screen time. Oh, we need the human interaction. This feels uncomfortable because evolution is supposed to feel uncomfortable. We are changing, we are adapting, and at the expense of the pleasure of being able to go to the office, have a walk and talk, we are amplifying efficiency with 10, 100, 1000x never seen before. So if you are concerned, dear listener, what it's like today, I'm just going to tell you, in 5 or 10 years, it's just going to be a couple of times that. We're not going back. So I am also curious about, since we're already in the questions, we have a question of our head of growth, Ola, as a venture capitalist, but also as a founder. How do you choose that one idea out of 100? What's your framework for that?
Everybody has their own frameworks for this, but it is a challenge. And actually, if we look at our deal sourcing, it's gone from the hundreds to the thousands over the last year. It's insane, the amount of people looking to raise money. So how do you pick that one company out or 2 companies out? It's a great question. And Like I mentioned earlier, one of the big parts of it is down to the team. So how do they connect together? How do they know? How do they work together? It's not about what school do they go to, but it's more about how do they understand the market and the problem? What are their experiences within that market? And how do they want to solve that problem? And how are they going to go about that? And what are their ambitions and the size of the market? That is the key areas here. And like I said, products can shift and change all the time. So, and markets can shift. So you need to change your product even then. So it's all about understanding how easy that founder will be able to do that. And if you believe in the founder at an early stage, then that can make the biggest difference. And you can sometimes, when you meet with the founders for the first time, you can tell them apart from each other, which ones are most likely going to be successful or not. And it all comes down to understanding the market and their knowledge there. If they know more than you, which they should, then that's great.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. We will have a couple more questions about tips for first-time founders, do's and don'ts. But the questions from our audience also beautifully intertwine with our talking points. So I will just squeeze them in one by one, because we were supposed to talk about the industry. Record year, will the momentum continue? This question from a LinkedIn user anonymously: after the meteoric rise of rolling funds and solo VCs in the US, do you see any competition of that type round here?
Yes, I mean, life is changing a lot, and the whole landscape is changing as well. And the European market for investors is very much looking to the US, and that competition is going to rise. And one of the things actually is that a lot of European funds literally look to the US and piggyback off what they are doing constantly. And that's where a lot of the competition comes from, is essentially there's a lot of people jumping and grabbing at the same deals. And that's one of the things why we believe in taking, because we're a larger team, taking multiple routes to try and find different ways to find these companies and find the success. So a lot of it comes down to our own deal sourcing. How do we find the best people before other people find them, and so on. So we have lots of things going on there to try and jump in before that competition jumps in. And then the other thing as well is, how do we then differentiate ourselves? And we've been through this with this whole platform offering and really understanding the founder and supporting the founder on their journey, as opposed to just giving them money and blind support from moving forward.
Blind support. I like the sound of that. So it all seems fine and dandy. A lot of money in Poland. We have this saying, I'm not sure what's the equivalent in English, but when there are two people fighting, there's going to be a third person who's going to benefit from this.
Mm-hmm.
So just to the tune of what you mentioned about competition, that if there are VCs competing with, I want to invest more, no, I want to invest more, then there's the founders who simply have their beaks wide open and are just waiting for that money to drop. But is it all that fine and dandy? Are there any negative consequences? Is anything poisoning the well, either on the founder side or either on the investment side? Bad behaviors, any patterns that you're seeing that are just being replicated because the current environment makes it so?
It is this. I mean, a lot of it over promising and under delivering from every angle. So as an investor, if you're trying to win a deal, you can easily over promise and under deliver on that side. And that's something you got to be very careful of constantly. But even from the founder side, if you're trying to raise more and take more for less equity, you've got to make sure you don't fluff your numbers and give higher expectations on return, because you can get more money out of it, more investment. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, that, but it does happen. We've seen it happen quite a lot. And one of the things is that as a founder, when you raise money, especially later stage, you can spend so much time focusing on raising money that you forget about your business and what you're actually doing, and you see the raising money as the goal. And and that's a very dangerous situation to be in, because you can lose sight of who the customer is. The customer is not the investor. The customer is the people buying your product. The investors are just the stakeholders, right? You've got to please them, but you've got to please them by creating value for your customers. So that's one of the things, is that a lot of people can easily see investment as the end goal, and that's not. It's just a stepping stone. Investment should be used to take you from one step to the next level, whether that's getting the product out the door, whether that's finding product market fit and delivering on your go-to-market strategy, or whether it's going through the growth stage and getting more customers or entering a new market. You've got to know what that money is for and have a clear objective.
I wanna mention a quote from I really hope I'm not mispronouncing this, Bhavin Turakia from Zeta. They raised a total of $310 million, but shortly after that, and all the excitement of unicorn status, he tweeted this: "A fundraise is an input, not an outcome; a pit stop, not a finish line; an enabler, not an achievement. We are humbled to be recognized as a unicorn, but we will park our right to be proud when we achieve our vision of becoming the largest banking tech player worldwide." So I think you gentlemen are on the same page here.
Yeah, it's funny how much people obsess with raising money and not delivering the product, and it creates a lot of expectations. I mean, we saw in the news yesterday, about Afterpay being sold to Square.
Yeah.
And Afterpay, they was acquired for $39 billion ish. But they've never made a profit. They've never paid any dividends and have less than 1 billion in assets. So it's like, how the hell does that happen? So now the challenge is for Afterpay and Square to make that happen. So they did that purely based on opportunity, right? So
yeah, I mean, so tell me why I'm a fool, because my understanding of such situations is there's Goldman Sachs, who just invested around 90 million. I don't want to play around with the currency, so I'm just saying around 90 million into Zilch, the buy now pay later that doesn't stop you at the transaction point, just actually gives you a card and you decide whether you're paying for KFC on buy now pay later or whatever else.
Yeah.
Then again, Goldman Sachs is with Apple in terms of the Apple Card, and they also have been recently in the news regarding developing a buy now pay later feature. So when I'm hearing about this and you're mentioning the common sense facts of the numbers just don't add up here. Why are you paying $29 billion for something that, just we don't see this? I think personally a hedge, a FOMO, just in case, we don't want to be late to the party. We don't want to miss that gravy train. And just like sometimes recording companies do that with artists, they sign someone to shelf them for some time to make sure that there's no cannibalization within the portfolio or something else, right?
Yeah, every industry does that. Even the film industry, they buy the rights to films with no intention of making them, just because it's similar to another one they're making, right? Yeah. But in this case, I mean, with businesses, some of the time it is to remove the competition. Sometimes it is to get in there. A lot of the time it's based on opportunity. Like I said, if the market opportunity there is, then they see market changes coming in and they think, okay, this is just going to grow and grow and grow. Today it's a $1 billion opportunity. In a year, we're looking at $20-30 billion. So let's jump on that now. And then some of the time as well, it's public companies picking up private companies because it 3x their revenue, 3x is their initial investment overnight, depending on the market and how the market is at the minute. So that happens quite a lot as well. So that's an interesting, there's lots of different reasons why these companies are bought for ridiculous amounts of money with a value that just seems insane. It's down to a number of things. Opportunity is the big one.
Yeah. I wanted to say something, but slipped my mind. So let's continue. What are those do's and don'ts for founders before the funding round and after a successful round? Because and let's avoid the building the product before validating it. Let's
Mm.
make sure that there's nothing like spending all your money on a logo and a business card and
Mm.
typography. Give me the worst, the non-obvious things that you have seen.
Okay, so the do's and don'ts. Do get your data in order from day one, as we said earlier. Understand the user journey and map every single data point to that user journey. Track everything, but if you track everything, you can easily suffer with analysis paralysis. So have a clear, these are the metrics that we focus on. And the best way to think about this is that imagine if you've got an orchestra and you just tell them to play some music, and you've got all these different instruments, which is essentially your data points, and they all start playing together, it's just going to sound like shit. But if you give them some sheet music and tell them to play, suddenly they start playing and beautiful music comes out. It's the same way with your data. You've got to have this user journey mapped out and track every single event to that to tell the story. By doing that, what you can do is you can understand where the opportunities are within your product and where you can improve it. And these are great insights for investors to see because from that, what they then can do is say, okay, you understand your product and you understand your business and how you can make this better for your customer. And that makes you then focusing on the customer's behavior as opposed to, I think this is cool, let's make it, which is what a lot of people can do easily. So that's definitely something to do. Have your data and have your team structure very much in place. So have clear understanding of who owns what. So a nice cap table already created. And this helps the investors then understand where they come in, what they take, how they can support you, and who essentially are they coming to the table with, and what opportunities are there. From the don't, what I would say is don't come in and just say you need 300,000 euros or €500,000 without understanding exactly what you want it for. You need to have essentially every single euro accounted for as to why you need it. Because an investor is not just going to give you the money for the sake of it. They want to know exactly what you intend to do with that money. And if you say we're 2 people now and we want to raise 200,000 euros because we want to hire another 5 people over the next 12 months, they're going to want to know exactly what and why you want to do that. And why not putting money into marketing? What about product development or R&D? What about partnerships? And these are things, is understanding exactly where that money is going to go. So don't come in just asking for money without a clear roadmap of where that's going. And one of the things that helps a lot is knowing your steps. With anything, whether it comes down to negotiation or building a business, it's the same thing. When you negotiate in life, whether buying a new car or getting whatever, you need to know what is your bottom price and what are the steps you're going to take. How much will you go up in increments, and what is the top end you can pay? And you need to have those steps planned out. And you need to do the same thing in your business. You need to say, this is where we are today. This is a bottom end of what we can do. And over the next 12 months, we're doing this, and this. And then our end goal is to, in the next 12, 18 months, is to go for our A round of investment. And these are the steps we're going to take to get there. And having that clearly outlined from an investment point of view makes the decision very easy. Because that way, an investor doesn't have to think so hard. They can think, oh, great, you know what you're doing. And we believe in this. Here, we'll support you.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast just yesterday. I think it was either just Professor Scott Galloway or Pivot with Kara Swisher, Prof G, and they did mention that they heard this approach that it's not that I will have a runway of X months, but rather 22 to 27 product cycles. Extremely mature way to look at the money that you have, right?
Mm.
So I don't want to be the time police. I have to be a little bit, but I'm not gonna be. I'm gonna be the good cop here. So let's run over a little bit because we have excellent questions, but these ones I think we can just go in a like a fire kind of answer response. So I'm a startup founder. How do I allocate the money after a round where I don't have a product market fit yet? Just just a rule of thumb here. So
How do you allocate the money?
some split, tech, people.
Oh God, that's different for every industry. There's no one size fits all there, for every product, for every industry, depending on where you are as well. But understanding that you need a balance. You've got to have your work-life balance, right? You've got to have the same in your business. You got to make sure you put a little bit of love into the marketing, a little bit of love into the product and the R&D, and so on. So you got to make sure you have a nice balance, but you got to make sure it makes sense. Don't just randomly throw money in and throw it at the wall and hope it sticks.
Okay. And if you're an entrepreneur, mind you, there are ways that you can limit your expenses for marketing and get creative with it and amplify the fact that, for example, you just raised money and use that here to avoid paying for that if you can use it just like that. So, okay, I'm investing in humans. I'm onboarding top talent. Do I hire for track record or do I hire for potential?
It depends how much money you've got. If you're hiring for track record, you're going to be paying.
You have that amount of money that you have to pick one, right? So
yeah. I would, again, it depends on what team you've got so far. But a lot of the time, having that superstar on board with a good track record can make a big difference. But it depends what you want to do with them. Are you using them for their name to try and win business deals? Are you using them to try and raise investment? Or are you using them because you actually need their knowledge? So there's different ways of what you should do there. But there's a great quote by Babe Ruth that yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. So you've got to make sure that you don't hire based purely on their past experience, hoping they can repeat that success, because it doesn't always work out that way.
Okay. So now pivots. Is there a pattern, like a set of red flags that when you see them, you immediately say, most likely this needs that?
Yeah. So one of the things here is if somebody tells me they've got product market fit, which a lot of people think they have when they don't, and then we look at their roadmap and we see they're adding new features constantly and changing the product constantly, and making even just tiny pivots within the product. That is a big warning sign, because if they say they've got product market fit, yet they're having to change so much and create new features to try and keep customers and then keep them retained, then that's a sign that they're not really where they think they are, and they need to really have a good understanding and maybe a bit of a wake-up call as well.
Okay. So last question from this rapid fire round, and this is actually from our Magda. Pitch decks should be short and specific. I think anybody who has the time should Google Airbnb's pitch deck and see how super simple that is, because it's just it's like 3 words or 1 image on a pitch deck, white background, nothing overly creative. What is one element that you just cannot miss if you're getting time?
Okay, so it's the basics. The basic format is you have the problem, solution, market, problem and solution, and team. That's kind of the main areas you're looking for. So you can understand the opportunity and total addressable market and so on. If you've got financials, if you're at an early stage, if you've got some financials, you can put those in as well. But the main thing is keeping it as short, as sweet as possible, as mentioned here. And think of every slide should tell one piece of information, and scrap everything else out of that slide, and maybe only have 5 or 6 slides. So the average time that somebody reads a pitch deck is like literally a few seconds. I think it's like 1 or 2 minutes or something. And if you're creating a pitch deck that takes 10 minutes to read, nobody's going to read it. So just have it as simple as possible, in terms of this is the message we want to show, and and everything on that single slide should just send that message. So that's, like I said, about the opportunity, the product, the solution, the problem, and the team.
And definitely, please, dear founder, bear in mind that the pitch deck is a sales tool. So think about the time that you're reaching out to somebody. Think about their circumstances of having to, you know, read 50 other pitch decks just like yours. So
Mhm.
that's essential. One last question from the audience, then just two general ones, and we will be done for the day. Although I'm not too happy about this. I'm really enjoying our conversation. With higher valuations, we often see term sheets that come with more rights, like double the liquidation or three times the pro rata rights. Have you noticed this trend in recent months as a result of, going from what used to be Series A to now being funded in seed?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, you could say right now it's a founder's market. And because of that, there is a lot more. If a founder is aware of that and they can play with that, you see a lot more different term sheets coming to play. And because of that, investment firms are looking at different ways to kind of work with that deal, especially in the competitive landscape of it all. So, and I think this is going to grow at least for the next year. We're going to see even more crazy requests coming in from founders and from investors alike. How that will shift, it's hard to say, but definitely something is cropping up, and hopefully there's not going to be a massive boom and it's all going to collapse in a year. But it doesn't look like it's going to be, not for a while.
All right. So I said two questions, but you always close up with those two questions. Number one is decision-making framework, but I think you've shared at least 17 decision-making frameworks over this conversation already. So we can just skip to the last one, which is disarmingly just disarmingly kind and non-tech. I'm handing you a remote magic wand. You get to wave it abracadabra, and every 12-year-old in the world all of a sudden is taught what? We've heard emotional intelligence, we've heard coding, of course, we've heard financial prudence, design thinking. Whatever the answer is, there's no right or wrong answer, but I just want you to make it yours. Why should those 12-year-olds, that by the time they'll be 18, will be greatly equipped to enter the world and make it a better place?
The big one is empathy. We need more empathy. From our day-to-day lives, we need to be more understanding with everybody else out there, and recognize that things are hard and support each other more than anything, and stop this culture of take and more of give. Because the moment you start being more empathetic to people, the moment you start supporting them and creating value for them, and as a founder, that can go a long way. The second you start thinking about people and their problems and how you can support them and what you can do to make their lives easier, the second you start thinking like an entrepreneur and you start thinking, okay, we can build a product and we can support them here and we can make life better here. And that's where the best companies come out from. The last thing you want to do is just lock yourself in a garage and build a product to come out 6 months later and say, hey, the world, buy this. Because that very, very, very rarely works. So understanding people, seeing what makes them tick and focusing on that is by far the most important lesson anybody could learn.
Okay, and that ties in beautifully with what you said about founders just talking to customers. Of course, it can be a very selfish way to look at empathy as a tool, as a means to an end. But I guess if we have more people being empathetic, then and having gains from it is the same problem as charities being somehow turning a profit and solving actual problems. So that was the last question. Jon, thank you so much for joining today. I will definitely be harassing you for a one-on-one call because I want to talk more about some things. Apologies for running over those 7 minutes. I hope we didn't impose on your calendar too much. We did. I'll make sure to make up for it. So feel free. I will release you from this. I'll just wrap it up. But otherwise, thank you so much. If there's any closing remarks, feel free. Otherwise,
well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you everybody for all your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get through them all, but feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you would like to discuss anything further.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jon. See you around. Bye-bye. So, I hope we didn't impose on your calendars too much with this 8-minute overrun, but personally, I'm not going to apologize. It was great and worth it. So, we'll await the written interview, the transcript of this, and await next week's Disruption Talks episode. And in terms of awaiting in the long term, we are just a month or almost 2 months away from Disruption Forum Retail. So we will be dropping a link to that in the comments, and I'm sure you'll be seeing plenty and plenty of ads concerning that event. So more to come. Stay tuned, and thanks for joining today. Bye, everybody.